In this video, I'll show you how to make these fun fleece hats. You can use fleece of your choice. This is an easy tutorial and it does not require the use of a pattern. Thanks for tuning in today. The materials you'll need for this project are, you'll need your sewing machine with coordinating thread, you need something to cut with, I'll be using a rotary cutter as well as scissors, need some pins, you'll need your fleece fabric, I'm going to use about 3/4 of a yard of fleece fabric, you need something to measure with, and you might need something to make a template out of if you end up making a bunch of these. My first step is to cut out my fabric. Now I've made a small template here. This is the total amount of fabric I'll need for this project, 24 inches wide and 15 inches tall. I am cutting out my fabric around my template, 24 inches wide by 15 inches tall. We have finished cutting our fabric to 24 inches wide by 15 inches tall. Now we're going to cut 6 inches from the bottom of the fabric, and this will be the cuff of our fabric. And fortunately my guide is exactly 6 inches wide by 24 inches tall and by 24 inches wide, so I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and cut across. And now we have our 2 pieces of our fleece hat. Now this is the right side up, so now I'm going to fold this over. So right sides are facing each other, so wrong side is now facing up. It's a little bit hard to tell on some of these fleece fabrics. So I always lay my fabric right side up first before I start cutting. So now I've got right sides together, I folded them in half, and I'll sew right down the line to make the circle of my fleece hat in the next step. In this step, I've got my right sides together, wrong sides facing out, and I will stitch about a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down this side of my hat. First I start with a quick back stitch, then I will sew all the way down. So simple. Just sewing in a straight line, back stitch a little bit just to finish it out. And here is the cuff of our hat. Next I will go to the top of the hat. So this is the top of the hat, this is the side of the hat. I'm just going to sew one straight line down this way and one straight line down the side. Very simple. So I'm finishing the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I start with a quick back stitch and then I'll just start sewing it right down the line. 1/2 inch seam allowance, finishing the top of my hat first. Then I'm going to come into the corner here. I'm going to try to stop about 1/2 inch away. And then turn it, and then I'm going to just sew straight down the line right here all the way down the side of my hat. This entire hat is made sewing in straight lines and cutting in straight lines. Very simple, easy fleece hat to make. And this is the top of the hat. My next step is to take the cuff of my hat. This is wrong side facing out. This is the side that we sewn. And then just turn it, not turn it, but just fold it over in half, as you can see here. Now you can see the good sides facing out. And we're forming the cuff of our hat now, just with our fingers. We also need our pins for this step as well. And then you see we've got the wrong side facing out, as you can see the seam right here. Now we're going to insert our hat with all the cut edges, unfinished edges, facing out, and we're going to do the best we can aligning our seams all together. But essentially we're going to put the cuff inside our hat and then pin it all the way around. So I start pinning where I see my seam that I've sewn, and I'll pin this cuff all the way around my hat. I'm aligning all of my cut edges together as I pin all the way around this hat. And when we finish pinning all the way around the hat, we will just sew this together with a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch. It's really up to you. And now we've got our seams lined up. We're ready to sew with our sewing machine once again. And before I get started here, I'm going to remove part of my sewing machine. I think this is called free arm sewing right here. And then insert my hat, get ready to sew it. Now I'm going to insert it in between two of my pins, and I'll remove the pins as I go around here. And I'll pull out my first pin. I don't want to sew over my pins with a zigzag stitch. And I'm just going to sew in a straight line all the way around the cuff of my hat here. And I'm getting back to where I started. Make sure it's all sewn together. And as you can see, I've sewn the inside of my hat. Now I'm just going to take my two corners of the top of my hat. I'm just going to sew the two corners together. Put the points so that they overlap just slightly. Now you can hand stitch this, of course, but just a quicker way for me is to just sew this by machine. And I'm just sewing the two corners of my hat together, back stitching, forward stitching, back and forth until I feel that they're attached. And now I've sewn the two corners together. And so now we've got our hat inside out. I'll just turn it right side out, and it forms a nice little curve because you put the two corners together. So this is our fleece hat. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.